Welcome back to Marketing Careers Uncovered. Today, reflecting on the fact that we've often picked up on the fact that progression, growth, and actually really understanding what it means to move into those more senior positions, it's definitely something that's not to be underestimated. So with that in mind today, actually, I'm really, really pleased to be joined today by Carolyn Bowick, who's held a bunch of leadership roles at institutions actually a lot of us will be familiar with. So if I say the University of Houston, Glasgow Caledonian University, and even the NHS, and just to add to that, actually throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, so it'll be quite interesting to hear a little bit about life there. In particular, though, what I'm really keen to dig a little bit deeper on, particularly with Carolyn's experience, is what leadership roles are really like, how you balance that strategic vision alongside delivering the day-to-day, and also getting a little bit of insight into when we think about our own career progression, what hiring managers are really looking for, going beyond a little bit deeper beyond the job description. So with that in mind, Carolyn, why don't you give us a little bit more colour as to who you are and what you're doing right now?
Thank you, Dave, and thank you for having me on. I'm really excited. It's not often, actually, that any of us, I think, take much time to just pause on where we are right now and look backwards and just think about how far we've come. So it's actually been really interesting thinking about coming on the podcast and how I've got to where I have got to. So I'll start there. So I actually have two jobs right now for my sins. So I have a day job in which I am the Director of Marketing Communications for a global technology company. And in that, I do a little bit of everything. So I do everything from writing the marketing and PR strategies. I do quite a lot of VIP stakeholder engagement because we work with governments around the world. But I also do quite a lot of writing content, and I do a lot of reporting and analytics and data analysis as well. So there really is quite a spread within that role. And one of the things that really attracted me into that role, and I think the most interesting part of the job that I have, is that we work with all different kinds of governments, but quite a lot of the work that we do is with fragile economies or countries that are emerging from conflict situations, which is absolutely fascinating and an area that I've not worked in at all up to this point. So just something really interesting about kind of delving into that. And it's really opened up my marketing professionalism, the need for some of those skills and thinking about different audiences and different customers that are in a very different position to me sitting in my office in my house just outside Edinburgh. So that's my day job. But separate
that's quite interesting in itself, because actually in the last couple of episodes and people we've had on, we've talked quite a lot about actually really stressing about stressing the small stuff and going, well, do you know what? Nobody dies if we get this wrong. I imagine that's quite different when you're dealing in a space where you're looking at fragile and post-conflict countries, where actually what you're doing and can influence actually does really matter. It makes a difference, but what you do actually really matters, and you've got to be quite cognizant of that.
Absolutely, and I think there's a really interesting fine line to be walked there as well. So the company that I work for at the moment is unlike any organization I've worked for up until this point. A lot of my career I've spent working in higher education and in universities in the UK and the US, and in those roles we like to think that we have an impact on individuals, on students, on research, on society, and that's true. In this role, though, there's it feels to me a much closer linkage between the organisation and some of the impact that we're able to help our customers realise and deliver, when they can be in quite complex and quite difficult points in their time with a million different priorities. How can we come in and perhaps help through leveraging technology? How can we take some of that weight off and put some structure in for them that will be helpful? The fine line part comes in, though, that I think it can be really easy in marketing to give yourself a bit of a complex about, we are so important in that growth journey or that journey that our customer is on. we do make a fantastic contribution in the work that we do, but the countries do so much of this work themselves. We are just an enabler. And the services that we provide enable them to take those really important steps. And that's something that I find quite challenging, that you don't end up with this kind of God complex in your writing, that you're stressing the benefits of what you do, but you don't end up talking like you are the one-stop shop solution to all of their problems. And I think that's been really key for me to understand and to engage with some of my colleagues who are situated in some of those countries, to just really understand the cultures and understand the position. And then the second part of what I do, which could not be more different to that, is I run my own marketing consultancy, which I've done in some guise or another for about 10 years, but it's really only the last 18 months or so that I've started ramping that up. So I've been working with small to medium-sized businesses, and I specialise in marketing strategy, but actually the bit that's really taken off at the moment is providing mentoring services to different stage career marketing and PR professionals, which is really interesting because it taps into the bit of marketing that I love, which is talking to people and hearing about different people's stories. So that's been really exciting. But I think the thing that probably joins the two parts of my professional life together is just variety, and the variety of what I do. So, writing a report or a letter to a kind of VIP in one of our customer countries one day, and then doing crisis comms for somebody on the consultancy side the next day. The variety of it is kind of what motivates me and what keeps me going.
Yeah, it sounds like you're certainly not ever bored, shall we say?
No, I do sometimes wonder, how much can one person take on legitimately, but I'm never bored. You're absolutely right there.
So that's interesting. It's really interesting to hear where you are now. Is marketing a space in which you always wanted to work in, or did you have your eye on something else when you were when you were younger?
Marketing was not something that I had my eye on at all. My undergraduate degree is in theatre studies, and all through school, I wouldn't say that I had a really clear idea of what I wanted to be, but drama was the subject that really, really attracted me. And I wanted to go to uni and to kind of delve into that a little bit further. I never wanted to act. That wasn't for me at all, but there was definitely something in the arts admin side that really interested me. And so when I left uni, I was certain, as only somebody who is 21 can be certain about these things, I was certain that I did not want to work in sales and marketing, and I did not want to work in an office. And look how life turns out, right?
What was it about your perception of sales and marketing then that made you so vehemently go, no, anything but that?
I think I had a very stereotypical view of what sales was at that time. That's changed completely over the course of my career. But, to me, sales was a guy in a shiny suit trying to sell you a used car, very hard sell, right? And I knew that wasn't me. I didn't want to do that. I guess I didn't really know what marketing was, and so I lumped it in with sales in that way. But when I left uni, looked at lots and lots of different jobs, applied for lots of different things, and the one that really attracted me, and the one I was lucky enough to be successful in getting, was working for the Scottish Chamber Orchestra. And it just so happened that the job was in their marketing team. And I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. It's a break into the arts admin side that I wanted to do. Let's see where it goes. And within 3 months, just completely loved it. And it was a very short turnaround from I absolutely don't want to do this to realizing that what marketing actually was about talking to people and to understanding people and that psychology of consumer behavior. How do I get people to show an interest in what it is we do? How do I get them to come and talk to me? How do I convert them from perhaps coming to see 1 or 2 concerts to becoming a season ticket holder? What do I need to do to get that interest from them? And then I was completely hooked and thought marketing is actually something that, one, I'm really interested in, but also it turns out that I'm quite good at and have some of the skills from my drama side that could be really, really useful.
So from that first step and that very first role, which you just talked about, to where you are now, it'd be really useful to start to get a bit of colour now in terms of what you started to find and see were the really important and valuable aspects of career progression for you.
Sure. So after that initial role, my career took a slightly unexpected twist in that I got married and my husband was offered a job in Texas, which was not on my radar at all. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get a marketing role when I moved to the States. It was an interesting decision because I felt like I was at the start of something potentially in terms of my marketing career with that first role, but it was an amazing opportunity. And I was very lucky in that when I moved over there, I got a media buying job at the University of Houston, which really quickly kind of grew into being a marketing manager job with a focus in the arts on campus. So again, completely in line with my own interests. And then fast forward a few years, we're coming back to the UK. I've got a baby in tow now. But I think the thing that was really challenging at that time was when I left to go to the States. Marketing manager roles, they needed experience. You needed to be able to demonstrate your experience and your knowledge of the sector. By the time I came back, the job market had changed quite significantly, even though it was only, about 3 years. And roles that were being advertised were really clear in saying they wanted some kind of academic qualification. So either a degree or a Chartered Institute Marketing qualification, something like that. And I didn't have either of those things.
Which you don't see that much of these days.
No.
Pendulum seems to have swung a little bit. Maybe some outlandish experience requirements, but certainly less focus on the academic side. I'm not sure how I feel about that sometimes.
I think where you tend to see that more, based on my experience, where I still see it popping up, is if the role is working for somebody who's not a marketer. So I think if you are interviewing for a role and you're maybe going in as a marketing manager under a director of marketing or a CMO or something like that, you tend to be working for somebody who understands the profession, right? Where I have seen it still pop up is if you're going into maybe a smaller organization, you're going to be the sole marketer, or you're working into a COO or something like that. I think people sometimes want the reassurance of having that. So they're looking for either an academic qualification or a chartership or one of the chartered bodies. And I think it really does just come down to, I'm looking, it's not my area of expertise, and I'm looking for external verification that you know what you're talking about. But yeah, it seemed to be a very specific point in time, because you're right, it's kind of filtered back off into the dark again. But it was a difficult point. And by that time I had more than 5 years experience, which is a decent amount of experience coming into, an early marketing manager kind of role.
Yeah, not to be sniffed at all.
But nope, doors just closing. And so the kind of where I got to was I was lucky. Okay, so I actually did get a market manager job. But where I got to was I thought I don't want to be in this position again. So I started studying part-time as well, which, looking back on it, was just insanity when I think about it now, because I'm working full-time. I've got a toddler and I'm doing an online master's. But I was really keen that I wanted to develop and I wanted to move into more and more senior marketing roles. And at that point, that felt like that was really essential. And it did give me that grounding in the theory, which I think has been helpful. And I think it also was a great confidence boost for me because it reinforced that the things that I'd been doing on a tactical basis without having a degree in it were along the right lines. So I think it was really, really beneficial. But I agree with you. I think there's if you're kind of sitting out there going, I don't have a marketing degree or I don't have a CIM qualification, is this something I would be thinking about? I think it's worth pausing and doing a bit of research and really thinking through that kind of cost benefits element of it, or whether there's another way that you can build your professional skills or evidence what you feel it is that you need to evidence that's not necessarily doing a degree, right?
There are many different roads to getting there. But I haven't spoken to anyone yet who's done some form of professional marketing qualification, sort of post grad, and gone, oh, do you know what? That was a waste of time. Because it all comes down to it's that grounding. It's being able to, we all have moments of madness, marketers, where we always risk going off and veering off course, and actually having something where you can go, well, actually, here's some fundamental eternal principles that can keep me on the straight and narrow and strategically focused. I think if you don't necessarily have that and you just hop around from role to role, it's like picking up your habits from your parents, isn't it? Really, where if you've got great parents, then you're to a brilliant start. If you haven't, and on the job market, it can quite often be a roll of the dice here. You could end up, equating marketing as being sales, or marketing is colouring in PowerPoint presentation, or this is the way we did it in my particular firm, so I'll just do that everywhere else. So grounding is really, I always have seen, is really, really, really important.
I think the other thing I would say is, I must have hired or managed dozens of people over the years, and I think I've only ever worked with 2 people who've got marketing undergraduate degrees. So I think there's also something quite interesting about what you do as an undergraduate and then what you do as a further qualification if you choose to go down that route, because there's a lot of subject areas that are directly relevant to what we do in marketing. So I've worked with people who've got psychology degrees, journalism, business. There's quite a lot in there that is really, really relevant and has been really helpful knowledge to bring in to the wider team. So I do think there's something about having that grounding, but also being open to what other subject areas bring in and how they diversify the knowledge and the skill set that you have within your team too.
So in terms of some of those attributes that have helped you, so taking away the sort of academic piece, what's helped you successfully navigate at each stage?
I think probably the thing that's been most valuable to me throughout my career, regardless of which industry I was working in or the role or the level of seniority, has been curiosity. And it's something that has probably driven me through my career as well. So it's opened a lot of doors for me in terms of the projects that I've ended up taking on and the skills and the experience that I've been able to develop. And it's opened doors in terms of the people I've met, because I've been interested to go out and ask, can I be involved in that? Or can you tell me a bit more about that? That sounds really interesting. And it's just opened that up so much that I've ended up working in projects and areas that I otherwise probably would not have done if I'd sat back and waited for things perhaps to come to me. And I think it speaks probably to that desire to get a qualification, to do some of the volunteering that I've been doing outside my day job, because being curious and continually learning is something that keeps me motivated. And I appreciate that that's a personal thing, but it's something that I look for now as well when I'm interviewing for marketing roles is, do you have that innate curiosity? I think it's really important for what we do, because one of the biggest skills in a marketer or a communicator is being able to take something that is really complex and understand it, and then break it down into something that anybody can understand and learn about. So taking a business problem, understanding from the leader in the organization, what is the business problem here, being able to develop a strategy that addresses that business problem and helps the business reach its goals is one way of taking that curiosity. Or in some of the previous roles that I've been in, I've either worked with academics or with technical specialists in their fields who are used to talking in a certain way, right? And, they know their subject inside out. And being able to use this innate curiosity to ask them questions about it, to really understand what it is they're trying to share, and then turn it into something that anybody can read and understand. So quite often when I've been working with people, I've talked about communications being like the Star Trek universal translator. If you're a Trekkie, this will make perfect sense. Where something could be in any language, academic, technical, and you take that and you translate it for the man in the street or the woman in the street, so that they can really get the meaningful messages of it. And I think I really think that comes down to curiosity. And I think if you're not curious about finding that out, you may generate some content, but it won't come with the passion.
And it's also the art of asking questions and the right questions. There's curiosity and understanding how to get to the actual nub of what either something means or what's the impact of this particular piece here. I always come to these things as if I had to explain something to my nan, how would I do that? And you strip away all the sort of BS and jargon that sort of sits around it and actually get to the what does it mean? Why does someone care? What do you need to do about it?
Absolutely. And I think actually not knowing a subject inside out as a communicator is really helpful in that sense, because you put yourself in the shoes of the end audience anyway. And being able to ask those questions, and when you get back an answer and you go, yeah, I still don't understand that, tell me more about it, tell me more, until you get to that nugget of information that is the thing that makes this story so interesting. I think that's really, it allows you to have an insight that otherwise you might not be able to bring.
Yeah, definitely. And that sector specialism, which a lot of firms and recruiters still hammer to the wall as being super, super important. It's a double-edged sword. Yeah, you could hit the ground running potentially a little bit faster, but there's also the risk of being institutionalized a little bit.
Absolutely. And that's something that I've come across in my career over the years, and that I haven't got a sector specialism. I've worked across a whole range of different sectors and industries, and the way that I've always approached it is that if I worked in the same sector forever, I think I would become institutionalized in that. And what I'm doing by moving from different sector to sector is bringing some of the knowledge and the understanding and the ways of working in that sector into the new sector that then I go to work in. So, I've worked in the NHS. As you said at the start, I worked in the NHS during the COVID pandemic, and then I've moved from there back into the private sector. But there's things that I bring every day to my job in technology that I learned from working in the NHS. And the other way, things that I brought into working in the NHS and higher education, I brought from my experience in the private sector. And I think it's just given me a slightly different perspective on things to perhaps if coming into a technology role, my manager had been really focused on only hiring somebody with technology experience.
Yeah, and being able to constructively challenge the status quo. It's not about sort of barreling in with a bulldozer and going, well, this is all rubbish. I know better. But being able to go, well, yeah, that what if you did
exactly.
Actually, all of our competitors are doing that. So why don't we take a slightly different angle here?
Absolutely. And that I used to work for somebody a long time ago who used to talk about that being the beauty pageant. So if we just lined up all our competitors against each other and then we stood next to them, would it just be like a beauty pageant where we just all look the same? And is that what we want? And there are times when actually, yes, we do need to look similar for a variety of reasons so that it's understood that we are a university as opposed to a vet. But actually, there are times when standing out is really important. And I think the way that things are going at the moment in terms of the economy, standing out for the right reasons is probably never been more important. So bringing that different perspective, I think, can be really valuable.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be interesting on your take now, having moved through quite a few roles. Are there things where you've looked back and gone, "Oh, I wish I'd just done that slightly differently," or "I wish I'd known, I'd known something more"?
I think pretty much anybody can look back and think on something, I wish I'd done that differently. I think we've probably all made mistakes. I'd love to meet somebody who genuinely thinks they haven't. That would be an amazing conversation to have.
Donald Trump.
Well, let me know if that happens, because I'd love to watch that one. Yeah, so I think, there's loads of mistakes probably that I've made over the years, and I think the difference is, how do you learn from those mistakes? And it's interesting because I was actually just talking the other day. I can really vividly remember a mistake that I made in that very first job at the Scottish Chamber Orchestra, and it still comes into my head. I was doing something this morning, completely different sector, completely different job, 20 years later, and I still remember that first mistake and going, I'm not going to do that again. And it was really just about checking the accuracy of something and learning from that and trying to take that forward and turn it into something that is more positive than reflecting back on the mistake. But
you have to tell us the mistake now. We can't gloss over that.
So it was incredibly simple, but also quite impactful. So basically, we were doing a concert in a venue in the Scottish Borders, and we were selling tickets direct, and we were selling tickets through the venue, and I messed up and I told the venue that it started at a different time to the tickets that we were selling. So we potentially had hundreds of people turning up for a concert that started at 7 and hundreds of people turning up for a concert that started at 7:30. And it was just that it came down to double checking something that I'd written down. And it was that simple. It was fine. It all got fixed. I fell on my sword. It was all good, right? But it's just
your
that
stomach moment, though, isn't it? When
it was that moment where I went, oh God, like this is not good. And it's particularly, I'd only been in the role, for a year and a bit at that point. So yes, that's something that has never left me, even 20 years on. But I think probably the thing that, when I look back across the last 20 years, is the biggest thing I've probably learned is about me, and not to get all kind of, kumbaya about the whole thing. But for a long time, I had this drive and I wanted to, move up the career ladder, and I wanted to, I suppose, quite aggressively progress and develop myself. And I took a lot of that on myself in terms of, doing this master's degree, always having an eye on what the next step was, trying to be everything to everyone so that I was in the right place to take whatever that new opportunity was. And I think it's only probably in the last few years that I've started to slow down and think, actually, what is it that I want to do? What is it that interests me? What is it that's important to me? And actually understand that, I suppose, and identify what kind of roles I could get that from. So for me, it's very much about, I want to work at a strategic level, but I also want to have an element of the tactical in what I do. And in some of the roles, as I got more and more senior, I was getting further and further away from actually doing marketing. And so it was important for me to have that kind of role where I could still keep my hand in a little bit and still keep up to speed with what was happening in the industry, because it's changing all the time. And I just felt like I was at a distance from that a little bit. So hence some of the choices I've made in more recent years.
And that's not taking away from that ambition still.
No.
There can sometimes still be this viewpoint of, well, if your own ambition equals ending up in super strategic roles where you don't really touch anything. But that's not the case. That's not the case, is it? Always.
No, and I think that's why it was so important that I don't think that's something that I could tell someone else, that they could, that they would come to that same realization. It was a number of years of doing different kinds of roles, and a number of years actually working at that really kind of senior level, to figure out which bits of the senior level I liked and which bits of the senior level I found not even difficult, because things can be difficult, but that didn't motivate me, that didn't drive me, that didn't excite me. And I think that will be completely different for different people depending on their own circumstances, their own motivators, their own take on what it means to be successful. There's lots of people that I've worked with over the years who didn't have that ambition to progress. Their ambition was very different. They wanted to come in and do a really good job at what they did at their level, and to maybe add another technical skill into that, for example. So I think it's just understanding what it is that you want and what you need in terms of your career, and that advancing is not for everyone, or advancing right to the top is not for everyone.
So, what are the aspects you're really enjoying most out of a marketing career?
I think becoming a people manager was one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my career. It's also been one of the hardest things that's ever happened to me in my career, so it is a bit of a double-edged sword. But working with people who are really good at what they do, whatever that specialism is, and helping them to develop and move up the career ladder or achieve some of their goals and ambitions is far and away one of the most satisfying things I've ever been involved in. And being cognizant of the fact that the bit that I've perhaps done is a very small part of that, but offering up some of the opportunities for people to take the spotlight, to take ownership of something, a little bit of mentoring that's they've maybe needed just to take those extra steps in their career, has been wonderful. And then seeing those people start to apply for other things and go on to other roles is brilliant. And I've never really understood those managers who say, oh, I don't want that person to leave, I need to hold on to them. Because actually, I think my job, if I do my job well, you will leave, or you'll go into a different role, because my job is to help you do that.
Well, the tighter you hold, the more likely they are to be squeezed out anyway.
Exactly, and it's not going to be a positive experience
I'd rather
for anyone.
I'd rather have 2-3 brilliant years out of someone than keep someone for sort of 5-6 just coasting along.
And I think I'm also very aware that as a head of a team or a marketing leader within an organization, you can't know everything. You just can't. And so having people around you who are interested in something and are interested in developing a specialism and staying on top of that, and then how do you open the doors for them to take that further? How do you get them in front of somebody senior, a senior stakeholder in the organization, so that they can start to build their visibility and their reputation? These are things that managers did for me, and that I want to pay that favor forward, if you like. But I think the flip side of that is being a manager can be hard sometimes, and I don't think anybody really prepares you, or certainly nobody prepared me, for the amount of time that managing takes up. And in one of my previous roles, I had oversight of a team of 61 people, and
wow.
Between a bit of strategy and that responsibility for all of those people, I didn't do any marketing really. And the balance of the great parts of coaching and mentoring and opening these doors, and managing, unfortunately, some of the more difficult parts of underperformance or absence or these things can be hugely time consuming. And I think it's taught me a lot of different things. But I think if, whenever I talk to somebody now who's moving into a management role, I say to them, you need to be thinking about 30% of your time minimum actually just looking after the people who work for you. So bear that in mind when you start to build the rest of your responsibility out. And it becomes a different skill set. So it becomes about how you remove blockers for people rather than doing that tactical day-to-day work yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember vividly my first move into people management, and I came into it with this sense of, oh God, right, I've got to have all the answers. Yeah, I've got to be leading from the front, as is often said. And actually, what I ended up learning over the years was actually it's as much about giving people some room and going, what do you think you should do? What are your options? But as you said, no one ever wheeled me through right. You're becoming a people manager. Here's a best practice approach. I certainly had to feel my way around, emulate others who I saw and found. Actually, yeah, I want to be a bit like that, and not so much like that. But the challenge is, a lot of the best leaders that you see actually make it look really easy.
Yes. And I think that's hard because then you start to beat yourself up about, well, it comes naturally to them because that's what you think based on that. They make it look easy. So why isn't it easy for me? But
Yeah.
it's another skill to learn. It's another thing to experience. And the people I particularly feel for, because this is not really a situation that I've encountered, but the people I really feel for is if your first foray into managing people is when you're promoted within your own team, because I think that must be so difficult. You've been amongst your peers, you've probably got friendships built within that, and then all of a sudden you're the person that has to have these difficult conversations, and you're the person that has to take that step back and sometimes be bad cop and is now privy perhaps to information that you can't share with people. And I think that must be really, really difficult. And I think whenever I've seen that happen to someone, I feel like that's a real learning point, a point at which you wish somebody would take them away and give them that secret handbook that suddenly makes it all clear, but it doesn't really exist.
I remember my first time having to take my team through consultations and redundancies, and that was also my first proper people management role as well. So it was real, out of the frying pan into the fire moment, and you get to know these people, and you know their kids' names, and you get to know people on a personal level, and then all of a sudden you've got to extricate yourself from that.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd had somebody coaching alongside that, or someone going, do you know what? I was you at one point. Yeah, here's how I managed that. Find your own way, but here's the stuff I was doing behind the scenes and how I just mentally approached it.
Exactly, and just sharing that moment that other people have gone through this too, and it's not you're not the first person to ever have to do this. There will be ways that you will put your own mark on it, but actually I really like this idea of bringing some of your own experience to it, talking to other people to try to bring their experience into it. But I really liked what you said there about not having all the answers. And I think there's something really interesting about vulnerability. And I think when you first become a manager, or actually even when you first become a leader, even if you don't have people management responsibility, there's a real danger that you feel like you need to know it all. And you do not want to appear vulnerable, because that could perhaps make people doubt whether you're up to the role. But some of managing some of those difficult situations is walking that fine line between taking responsibility and being in a leadership position, but balancing it with not having all the answers and being open about the fact that you don't have all the answers, and being open about the fact perhaps that this is the first time you've done this as well. So you are going to have to learn this a bit together. And generally, when I have done that, I think people are quite sympathetic to it. But one of the things that I found, again, I guess nobody kind of prepared you for, is that sometimes when you are in these difficult positions, and this consultancy one sounds like it would have been a real cracker of an example for that, is it can be kind of lonely when you are in a leadership position. And if somebody had said that to me, a few years ago, I would have got my tiny violin out of, wow, your life is so hard. You're in this really senior position and you're getting paid all this money and everybody listens to you, and wow, your life is so difficult. But actually, do you know what? Sometimes it would be really nice just to have somebody to, go into a room, close the door and go, oh my God, this is terrible. I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm really worried what everyone's going to think. And I've never done this before. And nobody tells you that that's okay. Pick your person, right? Find somebody that's not in your team, but pick your person.
Because you get squeezed on both ends of the spectrum here. Yeah,
yes.
From your direct team, and then there's always someone more senior than you, unless unless you own the business outright, or there's always somebody more senior above you, and their priorities become your priorities.
Yeah.
And everyone's problems become your problems from the
you're stuck in the middle of that dynamic. And I think if you've never been in that position before, it becomes really isolating, and it becomes, again, like you're the only person this has ever happened to. And the biggest thing for me in that was build your network. And it's something that I remember getting this advice quite early on in kind of my people management career, and I didn't really get it, and I didn't really listen, and I learned the hard way from that. Is build your network. So there will be things that are not appropriate to share with your team, but there will be other versions of you, either in your organization if it's big enough, or in other organizations. So find those people, build that confidential space to share some of these challenges, hear from other people what's worked for them. And if that's not possible, get a mentor, get a coach. Just find somewhere that you can release some of that and work through what the challenges are and come out the other side of it. And it might seem a bit self-indulgent, but actually it's better for you, and it will be better for your team if you have that space. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And I've built some really, really strong relationships with people with that in mind. And I'm not going to call it therapy, but it's damn close to just being able to unload, or even have someone come back and go, really?
Yeah.
Heads up about that, really? Yeah, a bit of perspective. And when it's somebody who is in a similar type of role, or have the similar types of responsibilities, rightly or wrongly, you respond to that better than if it was a partner or or someone within your family who might not quite understand some of the nuances, or just how much pressure can be piled on top sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit of constructive criticism, I think, is, it's okay to come along and have a moan, but then if somebody needs to pop your ego bubble, then let's do it and come out the other side of it and constructively challenge you and say, are you digging your heels in here because it's an ego thing? Are you digging your heels in because it's the right thing to do? What is it? And just ask some of those difficult questions. Yeah. And then you've worked through it all in a space that doesn't impact your team.
Yeah, we get quite emotionally invested in the work that we do. So no doubt, it does happen from time to time. So, a great conversation so far, and actually so much that we've had to split this into two parts.
So do come back and join us for part 2, where we're picking up on some of Carolyn's experience in crisis management, what her experience as a hiring manager can teach us as candidates looking to progress, and why being a manager and leading a team isn't always the route onwards and upwards. So do look out for that soon.